Buddy, Brian McNichols here with Angela Dahlgren over there. And we are back for the second of our Star Wars rewatches. This is episode 2, Attack of the Clones. Um, not much else to say about it, I guess. If you're watching this, you are probably pretty
Yeah.
familiar with the Star Wars movies, I would hope.
Yeah, no, this is probably my favorite of the prequels. Probably the one that I watched the most. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I saw this 5 times in theaters. That's kind of embarrassing when I think about it. Yeah, I saw it 5 times in theaters. I think I saw it and then like a week later it actually came out on video. So yeah, that's how it goes. Anyway, yeah,
Nice.
that's what we're talking about. Also, we wanted to address that we switched up the rewatch schedule to kind of accommodate Galaxy's Edge opening at Disneyland and to work it into, Brian going for the Disneyland opening. So,
Yes.
Brian, if you could pull that up, that'd be
Yep,
great.
there it is right there. It is now. It is mostly going to be weekly. We are still going to attempt to do all 10 of the live action movies that are Star Wars related, including Solo and Rogue One.
Hmm.
We are doing them in chronological order, as you've probably figured out, being that this is the second episode and we're on episode 2, which we kind of decided to do just because I don't think I've ever watched them this way, for one, but also to kind of get through the prequels as fast as possible. I really didn't want to. I really didn't want to end on doing like 3 of the prequels and then Solo at the end, to be honest.
Yeah.
So. Although I guess episodes 7 and 8 would have broken them up, but still, this is a way I've never actually watched the movies. Every time I've gone through before the Force Awakens, I went through and watched the 6 available movies at the time, but I did it in release order then.
Yeah.
So this is the first time I've ever actually done this, and yeah, I don't know. I don't know what my favorite of the prequels is yet because I really do not remember Revenge of the Sith much at all. And
I don't either.
but I guess we might as well. You said you saw this one quite a few times, right?
I did. And you saying you don't remember Revenge of the Sith, I say that this is my favorite one. And I say that I don't remember Revenge of the Sith at all, but I still stand by that. It's just because I
Hmm.
watched this the most. And Phantom Menace, we talked about that in 2 weeks ago, how we kind of felt about that and how it was boring for pretty much most of the movie, with the exception of some battle scenes. We get a lot more battle in this movie. So, we don't have any comments yet, but once you join in, please tell us where you're watching from because we didn't do that the last discussion, and I'm always really curious to see where our viewers are from. So let us know what country, what state you're watching from, and let's
Yeah.
let's kind
Well,
of get started.
looks like we don't have too many people watching yet, so they're gonna have to just catch up, I guess, when they come in. So, now you mentioned you saw this one quite a few times, right?
Yes.
But
Yes.
you were younger. This came out May 16th, 2002, so it was about 3 years after Episode 1 came out. Um,
Yeah. Looking at the date, I was right in that teenage girl phase.
yeah,
So I was 13.
I
So Anakin
yes,
Skywalker.
I feel like that's the sweet spot for this kind of
Yeah.
stuff. Is that especially this one because it was so romance heavy. I'm going to put some heavy quotes on that, but um,
Yeah.
I totally could see that. See, I'm 10 years older than Angela, so I was going to be 23 a few months after this came out, so
Yeah.
I was not particularly into this. Oh, we have a couple people, Emma from Arkansas, D McGee's on here. She's our
Mhm.
regular viewer. Hi D.
Yep.
Wendy's watching from North Carolina. We have Ashley watching from Chicago. Great. So that's
What's
awesome. I also enjoy seeing where everybody is, but yeah. So this in the so I didn't see this. This it's funny because I saw episode 1. In theaters. I saw parts of it. I saw the end of it probably 7 or 8 times. We kind of got into the habit of seeing when we'd see other movies, we
Mhm.
would um, we would then kind of sneak into the last half of episode 1 to
Mhm.
see the battle stuff and Darth Maul. This one I actually didn't. By this point, I had a real job. I was working for the government in Maryland, so none of my friends were in the area. So I actually didn't see this in theaters for a couple of weeks, I think, after it came out. Plus, it
Brian.
also my friends that did see it immediately weren't giving the best feedback on it exactly. So I was kind of like, you know what? All right, my wife is not into Star Wars at all, so she was not interested in seeing it with me. And actually, we weren't married yet. We got married the year after this, but they it was probably 2 or 3 weeks, and I only saw it the one time in theaters, and I probably only saw it once or twice after that. Although this one I feel like I remember much better than Revenge of the Sith, and I think part of it is because this one is ridiculous. I actually very much enjoyed watching it from the same reason that I enjoy watching movies like Demolition Man, because like it's silly to the point of being funny when it's not trying to be funny. Um,
It's
so
it's
that's
the it's the lines, like
hmm
the actors. You can tell that, like Hayden Christensen. He was in Life as a House. I thought he did a really good job in that movie. Like he has the ability to be a semi good actor. Like he's not a bad actor. In other words, we know Natalie Portman is a good actor. We know
hmm
Ewan McGregor, good actor. But these
yeah.
lines, it's
Yeah,
the it's the
and
script.
it really the younger ones are definitely having a problem with it.
Yeah.
Actors like Ewan McGregor, I think, does as well as you could hope. I actually like Ewan McGregor in these movies, despite how bad some of the dialogue is. And Christopher Lee, I'll talk about a lot later.
Yep.
He says some of the most ridiculous things and just knocks it out of the park, which is something he had been doing at this point for 60 years, saying terrible lines in movies. So that's but yeah, Natalie Portman and I almost said Jake Lloyd again, but that was the last movie. And Hayden Christensen have a real problem with it. And it's funny. There's quotes. I couldn't find the direct quote, but there's something I've heard a lot about George Lucas is that he's said for a long time that people don't see movies for the dialogue. They see it for the spectacle and the action. And that was never more present than in this film.
Yeah, you can tell he kind of wrote it like that. And what's funny is that this film is so much focused about the romance. That's a huge part of the film. And when Brian's writing his notes, he like doesn't focus on the romantic part of it at all.
No.
He makes like one reference in the
Mm.
entire note section that we have, and
I,
that's it.
I will probably talk much more about it than I wrote about it, but a lot of it's kind of in my head.
Yeah,
So this
you're just
so
kind of over it.
so before we get into details, we'll set up the timeline. In story timeline here takes place in 22 BBY. BBY and ABY is kind of the way that Star Wars nerds measure time, and it's the Battle of Yavin, which is the battle that takes place at the end of A New Hope. And so this is 22 years before the events of Star Wars. It is 10 years after Phantom Menace, which they do say several times.
Mhm.
So we're gonna do it a little bit different. Rather than having us just read plot for the next 5 minutes, we're gonna take it in sections. So we're gonna go through each kind of set of scenes, and then we'll discuss it a little bit and move on. Hopefully that will organize this a little bit more. So the film starts on Coruscant, and oh wait, I have graphics for these. There we
Ooh.
go. Um, so, 10 years after the Trade Federation's invasion of Naboo, the Galactic Republic is threatened by a separatist movement organized by former Jedi Master Count Dooku. Whew, the names are rough in this, too. Now, a senator, Padme Amidala, comes to Coruscant to vote on the creation of an army to assist the Jedi against this threat. Narrowly avoiding an assassination attempt upon arrival, she is placed under the protection of Jedi Master Obi-Wan Kenobi and his apprentice, Anakin Skywalker. The two Jedi thwart a second attempt on her life and subdue the assassin Zam Wesell. She is killed by her client, a bounty hunter, before she can reveal his identity. The Jedi Council instructs Obi-Wan to find the bounty hunter, while Anakin is tasked to protect Padme and escorts her back to Naboo.
Okay, so let's kind of break that down a little bit. The first scene starts off with, I guess, a little bit of action. I mean, the ship that Padme Amidala comes off blows up, and Corday, her decoy, dies, obviously. Famous last words from her lieutenant: "Guess I was wrong. There was no danger." I mean, that always kind of makes me laugh. That
Yeah.
right afterwards blows up.
Well,
Um,
I also love that she says that she failed the queen, but that's exactly what she was there for.
I
is
know.
to like draw fire so the queen doesn't. So
I know.
I
It's
mean, it
like,
seems
well,
like she aced it, but
I
yeah.
know. It's like you did your duty. Like, well done. And then let's see. So then afterwards, you kind of meet Obi-Wan and Anakin right away.
Hmm.
And Padme never misses an opportunity to just like burn Anakin and just kind of like knock him down a
Oh,
notch from the very beginning.
yeah, it's the one I have on the screen now. Oh, Annie, you'll always be that little boy I knew on Tatooine, which, as Angela pointed out, is a very sick burn,
I know.
and which is I don't know the entire romance in this is is very silly. I understand completely why Anakin is after 10 years still obsessed with Padme. Um, she was a the teenage girl that he knew when he was kind of just starting to realize what women were, probably at like 8 9 years old. And then he's been training with the Jedi, where they've been basically trying to force him to not have any feelings for anyone or anything.
Yeah.
Um, so I get that side of it completely, that he would be kind of obsessive with her. The part I don't understand is why she has any interest in him whatsoever.
Yeah, I mean, she met him as a kid, and
Hmm.
then 10 years go by, and that's kind of it. They don't see each other, and then she doesn't really see him at all until he's what? Let's see,
He'd be
18?
about 18ish, yeah.
No, 19,
Is
19.
that, yeah.
So because he was 9. Yeah,
I think
19.
he's either 8 or 9. I can't remember offhand,
So
but
it would really kind of have to be love at first sight, other than the time they spend together in Naboo. That really have to be it, which we'll get to a little later. So I'm not really understanding. I mean, for
yeah,
him, it's just like he has
yeah.
those 10 years to be like, oh, this is the one girl I've ever seen, and then Jedi can't marry. So it's like you kind of fixate on her. But I mean, from her perspective, like you said, I don't really get it.
Yeah, for him, I think it's more of an infatuation than anything else, which is fine, and it actually probably fits with the character very well, for
Yeah.
what he will become. But yeah, hers is the part, and we'll talk a lot more about this. Um, the because some of his lines, and I see somebody in here. Oh, Dee said that Hayden Christensen doesn't do romantic well, but he did better at the end when he turned to the dark side. And I think the casting notes that I've heard, and I should plug them again. I've been listening to a podcast called Star Wars Minute. That if you ever want like real minutia on Star Wars movies, I suggest that they go minute by minute. It's 5 days a week, and they take each minute of every Star Wars movie. They are up to The Force Awakens now, and if you ever want, just everything about Star Wars. But I've been doing it prepping for this, and they said that it came down to a couple people for Anakin at this age, and they liked Hayden Christensen because he had this simmering darkness in him all the time.
Yep.
So I think that he does do a lot of that darkness very well, but everything else he just it is very hard for him. We don't really know all the others. Ryan Philippe supposedly was one of them that was up for it. They asked Leonardo DiCaprio if he would do it, and he said no, which is too bad because he probably would have absolutely crushed it. But I can understand why he wouldn't want to do a movie like this when he already had a career. So
I kind of agree and disagree. I think that he definitely did the dark side better. I think that he did a really good job of showing that kind of, the fact that he's still a little boy inside. He
mm-hmm.
had the puppy dog eyes down. He did, the whiny little, just like that. You could tell that he was still kind of a child inside. He played that really well. But when he would like do the romantic thing, he just sounded obsessive and kind of like a
Yeah.
stalker, and it came off really creepy. So even though like I think that he did like the whole puppy dog eye staring at her like that, well,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it did come off really creepy. So I
And
agree in that sense.
I know Angela pointed out in our notes at least, which you can't see, so I don't know why I'm mentioning it. But one of Padme's handmaidens in this one, the main one that talks to her right before they leave, is the actress Rose Byrne, who has been in many movies since then.
Yeah,
And actually, I think
Troy,
does
Bridesmaids.
she does a pretty good job in this actually too with her lines.
Yeah,
So after once they start guarding Padme, there's a whole scene where She almost gets assassinated by bugs.
Bugs.
And there's a lot there's a lot of nitpicking we could do about the plot in this too,
And
but it
someone
would take
said
so
that
long.
someone said that the plot, oh, Wendy said, I found it hard to follow the plot. And that's kind of true with most of the Star Wars films, I'd say.
I don't. I think, I mean, we'll get to all that when we get into the original trilogy. The original, especially the first Star Wars, I think is actually a very simple, which is
Yeah.
one of the reasons I think it worked so well. This one, it's a lot of these little things, like why. Why did the bounty hunter that we'll find out later is Jango Fett? Why did he hire another bounty hunter or an assassin to kill Padme? Why didn't he just do it?
Yeah,
And
you could have done it
why did they
better.
use bugs instead of just cutting a hole in the window and shooting her? Or like
Mhm.
there's a lot of little weird decisions like that do make it very hard to follow. Plus the fact I
Yeah.
think that Darth Sidious, Emperor Palpatine, is pulling the strings on both sides, make the motives real fuzzy.
Yeah.
Um, but this leads to a pretty long chase scene that is one of the things that I really dislike about the prequels. We talked a lot about the pod race scene last or 2 weeks ago and how
Hmm.
long it is. And this too, like it just goes on for a very long time, and nothing is really gained from it. You get a little bit of action. You find out that Anakin is kind of a more of a daredevil, and Obi-Wan wants to calm him down, but other than that, it's just a lot of driving through CGI cities.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, but when it comes down to it, because I was thinking about this, when it comes down to it, which was better, the podcast race or this scene?
I
And
like that you called it the podcast race just now, which,
oh my God, the
um,
podcast race. Can you tell my coffee hasn't kicked in? I'm so tired. The pod race
um,
or
I,
this scene.
I mean, I like the pod race better. I think it just looks better. It's done during the day. I don't really have much desire to watch either one of them. I think the dialogue in this scene is atrocious. And
Well, I mean the whole film.
Well, yeah, but they're trying to do like kind of witty banter with each other, and it's just not working. Um, the Your typing is very loud, by the way.
Sorry, I'm promoting. Sorry, I'm promoting our discussion right now.
That's
Twitter.
okay. One fun thing when they get to kind of a very Star Warsy bar dance club in it that you can keep typing. It's not distracting me. I was just telling
I'm
you.
done.
Um, but and it's full of all these weird aliens, and there is a death stick dealer that comes up to Ewan McGregor, and yes, I will 100% be asking for death sticks when I go into Galaxy's Edge, but the death stick dealer, his character name is Ilan Sleazebagano, which I thought is very funny, and I found out he is played by the actor that played Mouse in The Matrix. And in that same bar scene, the woman in red, that the program that Mouse created, is one of the women in the bar that kind of gives Anakin love eyes. So
See, I recognized well, I know the woman that you're talking about, but I kept looking for a woman in red and I couldn't find her.
yeah,
But I know the woman you're talking about. And so when I saw that note, I'm like, well, where is this woman in red? And I
in the
couldn't find
Matrix,
her.
she was only called the woman in red. So, but this episode 2 was I believe it was the first of the Star Wars to not be filmed primarily in England studios. This was filmed in Australia,
Hmm.
and because I think the Fox studios were pushing Australia for, I'm sure, tax purposes. And the movie that wrapped right before them was The Matrix. So that's basically
Oh,
why, and I believe both of those two actors are Australian, as is Rose Byrne, as are many of
yep.
the like side actors in this film, because either Australian or New Zealander, because that's where they were filming. So they kept grabbing just locals for all of these parts.
Well, and they actually did quite a few really nice filming locations. Like I
Yeah,
think Naboo is in Seville, and
yeah,
I think they did other scenes like in Lake Como. Um, I
yeah,
think
yeah.
like where they did like uh where the retreat place where Anakin and Padme went. So they really ventured off more for this film, which I really liked. I mean, it was pretty background footage. I thought that Zam Weasel being a shapeshifter didn't really add
Oh,
anything to the
well,
story.
That was actually, funny story, that was added in post production. She did not know she was a shapeshifter when they were filming. So that's probably why it doesn't add anything because yeah, that's another one of those things that like, well, why didn't she just change into somebody else to hide? But they couldn't
Right.
do that for some reason. When they were editing the film later, they decided, oh, let's make her a changeling. Um,
Right.
so they did in one of the reshoots, they added a line about that and then did the computer effects. But yeah, I was so confused. I feel like I saw this movie like 3 times before I heard the line where they mentioned that she was a changeling, and
Yeah.
I just could not figure out why she turned into a lizard when they I thought it
I
was the
know.
poison
I
or
thought it was,
whatever, like.
that's what I thought too. I'm
Yeah.
like, does the dart do that? Like, what's the deal?
And there is a scene during the chase, I believe, when Anakin lands on her thing and puts the lightsaber into it. She kind of panics a little bit, and you can see like she slightly shifts a little bit then, and then
Yeah, her
shifts back.
cheek does. Yeah. I noticed that too. But again, I thought maybe it's because she like got hurt
Yeah. So
and
it
like that
was,
happens.
yeah, it was a very. They did some strange shooting things. Another one is in the Jedi Council because they go to the Jedi Council now to get their assignments, and all the wide shots in that are footage from the first movie. They just reused all of it, and then anytime someone's talking, they do a close-up shot that was filmed after and composited into the scene. So
I
it's
guess no one changed in that long, especially like
they actually
Yoda.
changed. They did change out one of the full council members. They had nuts. I can't think of his name right now, but he had a very long neck and a little balloon head that waved back and forth.
Well, he
And
wasn't, yeah, he wasn't even in that
no, well,
movie.
they digitally inserted a different character on top of him because they thought it would be he looked too much like the Kaminoans
The
that
Camino,
we'll
yeah.
see next, and that it would be confusing. So, but yeah, it's I don't know. They. I mean, we all know George Lucas was in love with his special effects, but he did some really weird things in this one.
Well, when you have that freedom, I guess, and it's they're aliens that you're designing, they can pretty much look however you want them to.
Yeah. A couple like before we go to the next section, a couple more things. Dex's Diner, which was Dexter Jettster's diner here. This was my biggest fear for Galaxy's Edge. I thought for sure that they would just try to put Dex's Diner into whatever Star Wars world because it's one of the few. This and the Cantina basically
Hmm.
are the only like really recognizable like dining type areas. So I am absolutely thrilled that they decided not to do that because having this random 50s diner in the middle of Coruscant is ridiculous, let alone in the middle of the theme park. So
Well, it
thank
wouldn't have
you.
made sense, and I don't know. It's a dingy place. It wouldn't have fit the aesthetics or the theme of the overall land, so I'm glad they didn't go with it.
Yeah. All
All
right.
right,
Should we
let's
move
move
on to the
on to
next section?
Camino. Yep. Okay. Obi-Wan's investigation leads him to the mysterious ocean planet of Camino, where he discovers an army of clones being produced for the Republic, with bounty hunter Jango Fett serving as their genetic template. Obi-Wan realizes that Jango is the bounty hunter he is looking for, and after a fierce battle, places a homing beacon on their ship, the Slave One. Obi-Wan then follows Jango and his clone son, Boba Fett, to
Who?
the rocky yeah, I know. To the rocky planet Geonosis. Meanwhile, Anakin professes his love for Padme, like he does so many times throughout the film, and is troubled by visions of his mother, Shmi, in pain. He decides to head to Tatooine with Padme to save her. Okay. So again, Padme burns Anakin by saying, "Oh, Anakin isn't a Jedi. He's just a Padawan learner." And he just takes it because he's a little puppy dog and whatever.
There we go. Anakin burned again. Well, that's actually right before Anakin got burned, but
Yeah.
we'll see.
Just
It is just funny
enjoy those
when I
days.
did image searches for Anakin burn. Of course, all the images were of him actually burning. So
I
it's like,
know.
oh, that's right, yeah,
That's why I just went for the Ashton Kutcher burn meme
yeah.
because I'm like that just says it best.
Um, so yeah, I actually really like the Camino stuff, even though it's a little odd and confusing. But I kind of like investigator Obi-Wan and the thing with the clone. I don't necessarily love that all the original stormtroopers were clones, but it at least it makes some sense within this story at least.
Hmm.
The guy who plays Jango Fett, who is I believe New Zealand, is a New Zealander, Tamura Morrison, has played some excellent father roles recently. Of
Yeah.
course, he's Boba Fett's dad. He was Moana's dad, and he was Aquaman's dad. So, so which is funny.
Typecasted.
Which was funny because I didn't even recognize him in Aquaman until I had rewatched this, and I was like, oh my god, that's Jango Fett. Um,
Seen Aquaman yet?
it's pretty good. It's fun actually. So which some of the DC movies aren't. So I enjoyed it. Um, but now some background story on on Camino and the cloning. They mentioned Jedi Knight Sifo Dyas. He is a former Jedi Council member who was gifted with foresight. He saw this entire war coming and knew that they needed this Republic army. He was removed for the council for basically saying that they needed to form an army. So he decided to go to Camino and have this created, knowing that they were going to need it. He then died on, I believe, an unrelated mission. And I'm not even sure that that's canon anymore because, for those of you who don't know, when Disney took over Star Wars, they basically took all of the all the books and things like that had previously been considered canon stories and made them legends. So they are basically just fun stories, but not necessarily the truth anymore. And the only canon things now are all the films, obviously, the Clone Wars film, the Clone Wars TV series, and the Rebels TV series
So
are
all
the
the
only
books,
things.
like the
They are
courtship of Princess Leia, that's all.
they are all legends now. Yes, they are not canon anymore. So I don't know if how much of the Sifo Dyas story is legends now. But one what I find very funny and very much a George Lucas thing to do was that he originally named he originally named Sido Diaz, which was a thinly veiled pseudonym for Sidious. And then it was typoed at one point in one of the scripts or a shooting script or something. And George thought that name sounded cooler, so he just made it a new character instead. But originally, this was supposed to be Darth Sidious himself that was creating this army for use of the Republic. Which would have actually made more sense than just some random other Jedi
Right.
that did it.
Yeah, but then dies.
Yeah, yeah, because they don't have them in any of the movies or anything. But
Right.
one thing I'll probably talk more about it next week. But I have been watching some of the Clone Wars series, which takes place in between episodes 2 and 3, and I've just been skipping around for things that are useful to me. The one of which that we'll definitely talk about when we get to Solo is that Darth Maul is still alive. And then yeah, oh, by the way, we're spoiling everything. Sorry, I should have mentioned that beforehand. But all that but there's the section I'm in right now, actually, so I haven't seen the end of it, is with the cloners on Camino, and where they find out that the programming for the clones contains Operation 66, which is the extermination of the Jedi that we will see in the next movie. And that basically the clones were always programmed to turn on the Jedi in the future. So, again, that would make much more sense if Darth Sidious was the one who had done it instead of Sifo Dyas. So.
Oh, you guys got all that? Oh my gosh. Thank God we have Brian here. We wouldn't have known. I wouldn't have known any of this. Maybe
This is
you
why I
guys
wanted to
would.
do this before Galaxy's Edge opens, so I can walk around making really nerdy comments and asking poor cast members things about Sifo Dyas and having them glare at me and smile. So
Oh my gosh. You're going to be that guy, and they're just going to be like, oh gosh, why was I put in this land? Because you know you're not going to be the only fan
no,
doing it either.
no, I am not.
No, no, you're probably not even gonna be. Oh, actually, we got over 200 likes on this video on our last video. So
Oh,
you
really?
or Len is gonna be dressing up for
Because
the
Han
opening.
Solo, I believe it was, yeah. So,
You,
although
you
I
guys are
will
gonna.
say, if I can find some really nice like Lando robes or capes, like that might be
If
a
you
thing.
guys tag team and do Lando and Han, oh my gosh, my year would be made. That would be so funny. Okay, I'm
Um,
gonna start looking for outfits now.
So, yeah, anything else to say about Camino before we move to the love story?
No, I think it's time we talk about the romance.
and of course the famous line, "I don't like sand. It's coarse, it's rough and irritating, and it gets everywhere."
Like,
And
I mean, Anakin really doesn't have game at all, but apparently it works for Padme, and I don't get it.
that's that's I was gonna wait until later for this, but like Anakin is such this like weird like kind of man child, which it makes perfect sense for his character that he
Yeah.
was, um, he's kind of almost underdeveloped as an adult. He is struggling with emotions that he isn't supposed to be feeling, and all of this stuff. I totally understand that. My problem with it is that I think he's supposed to be likable in this movie. Like I think we as an audience are supposed to feel for him, and I just don't like. One of the things I love, and I will probably talk endlessly about when we get to The Last Jedi, is that Kylo Ren is basically the same type of character, except in the newer movies we are definitely not supposed to be on his side. We are other than, I mean, there obviously are bits where we start to understand his point of view, but Anakin, I feel like up until he starts committing genocides, which is coming very soon. But
Can't really side with him for that.
but I think up until then we're supposed to kind of think like, oh, this poor kid, this and I don't know. He just seems kind of like a jerk the whole time.
Well, okay, so like you're the guy's opinion, I'm the girl's
Hmm.
opinion. So he has the teenage girls' popular vote. I mean, obviously,
Well,
because
yeah.
he's good looking. Now, watching it back, I'm a 30-year-old woman, and like
Is
I
that hard to
feel
say? She just turned 30 recently, so.
it's just weird. It's just weird. Um, and looking at him now, I feel bad for him because I see a young man who's 19. He's not really a man yet. He's not. I mean, he's still in his teens. He had to grow up fast because, he had to like leave his mom, join the Jedi hood, the Padawan hood,
Mhm.
and he's just between a boy and a man. So I kind of feel for him from that perspective. Plus, he's seeing visions of his mom. But then I'm like watching him, like trying to get with Padme, and I'm like Obi-Wan didn't. I mean, I guess he couldn't teach you how to flirt with girls because that's not part of like the Jedi hood, but
Yeah.
like it's just so cringy. And then it works. And then
Yeah. That's.
face after they kiss is so funny because after she's like, "No, I shouldn't have done that." And his face is like, "What'd I do? Where
Yeah.
did I go wrong? Was it the sand talk? I don't get it."
And I think ultimately that's my problem with it too, is that she falls for it, and then like I just don't understand how like I would have and I think there's a lot of things they could have done with her character to make it more believable. I mean, the really dark path would have been that he basically like over time is continuously mind tricking her into thinking that she loves him. Which definitely would have walked him down the
Ooh,
dark
that's a plot
side
twist.
a lot faster. Um, you know, but I think they could have also just made her more like, if they made her a little bit more like, if instead of being a senator, she was just the former queen, and she was almost desperate to get back to power, and saw him as the path to get back to a powerful position or something like that. Like basically give her a little bit of darkness too, where you could
Yeah.
see like, okay, like she sees the power in him and that's what she's attracted to, kind of thing. Where like the way the character is now, she's very intelligent, she's relatively innocent but not
Hmm.
naive, and
Hmm.
I just don't see her. Like I could almost see her seeing Obi-Wan and being like, hey, what's up, like.
I know.
you know
Well,
but
and you're not the only one who thinks that way. I mean, people in the comments, um, uh, Kanye Smutka said, "There's no way a smart, accomplished woman like Padme would be into Anakin."
no.
Wendy said, "But we know he becomes Vader. You can't ever forget that in these movies."
Yeah.
Dee said, "I'll take Liam Neeson over Hayden any day." LOL.
Yeah.
So I mean, yeah, she
Yeah,
wouldn't be.
and it just, and there's like little things I think they could have done that would have made it at least somewhat understandable why she would be at least attracted to him. But the that she just falls head over heels in love with him, as far as I remember. um, but but yeah, and one thing I should mention, Galaxy's Edge related here. This animal, the one that Anakin jumps on the back of in a very very terribly rendered scene, and then falls off of, is called a shack. Shaak, and it is one of the animals that you can eat at Oga's Cantina in Galaxy's Edge. So,
Why
uh,
they pick that
just
animal?
I think they were just looking for animals that looked like they would be edible.
It looks
Um,
so fatty. Like that's the like least animal out of all of them I would eat.
but you can taste it. I forget what it really is. I mean, it's probably
It,
like pork
I
or
think it's
something. But
yeah, it's like pork
um,
ribs or something. It just
yeah,
looks like a big bubble. It just does not look good.
no.
Do you want to move on to Tatooine?
Let's do it. Let's get to Tatooine.
All right.
Uh, so where is my little plot? And I'm sorry, these I'm looking now. These plot things I'm putting up are not formatted well. But my kids ended up with a snow day today, so I don't have as much time to do on them as I wanted. So Tatooine, Watto reveals that he sold Shmi to Klieg Lars, who then freed and married her. Creepy. Klieg tells Anakin that she was abducted by Tusken Raiders weeks earlier and is likely dead. Determined to find her, Anakin ventures out, finds Shmi at the Tusken campsite where she dies in his arms. Enraged, Anakin massacres the Tusken tribe. Moving ahead only a little bit there, but this is an important part to talk about because this is where Darth Vader really starts to take form here.
Yeah. I
Um,
need you to read what you wrote on the 21th bullet, Ryan, because it's just so funny.
yeah, when he walks into the or when Padme comes in and he says, "I killed them all. They're dead, every single one of them. Not just the men, the women and children too." My
That's
comment
not funny.
my
It's
my
coming.
comment was, Padme wasn't sure about a relationship before, but hearing about murdering women and children really lights her saber. So because I just cannot imagine any circumstance where you would hear someone that you maybe are having feelings for say that sentence and then go, yeah, okay, that
I
sounds
know,
right.
and she's like, to be angry is to be human. And I'm like, okay, Padme, but he just killed like an entire village of people or
Yeah.
sand people. Like, we can't overlook that just because you think he's cute and want to kiss him. So
Yeah,
I don't
he didn't get mad and break his Xbox controller. Like he slaughtered an entire tribe of
yeah.
of creatures. Like it's
And she's the one who like wants to look for a diplomatic solution and not
yes.
aggressive negotiations, and then she's like totally fine with him just watering a village. So I don't really get it, but we also see for the first time Uncle Owen and Aunt Beru
Yes.
and the blue milk.
Girlfriend Baru. Yes.
Well, yeah,
Which
they're not
is
married yet.
I can't understand why Baru's even in this scene. She doesn't do anything, and it's literally just for honestly one of my least favorite lines I think in this film, which is saying something, which is "This is my girlfriend Baru," which just the use of girlfriend that is sounds so odd coming out of someone in Star Wars. I mean, they call kids younglings all the time,
It's
and
like so normal.
yeah, it's a very strange. Like they could have thought of something else to say there. I feel like. Um,
But they had to introduce her so that it would set it up for the
Did
original
did
films.
they? I mean, they could. I don't think it's unreasonable to find that young Joel Edgerton, who plays Owen, would have just met someone and got married in the next 20 years. Like,
Well, they did it for everything else, so I
well,
kind of
yeah.
get why they did it.
Well,
It
I
made
understand
sense to
why they
me.
did it. It's just a
You don't agree
weird.
with it.
Well, and it honestly, even Tattoo, like I have a huge problem that they made Anakin Skywalker, uh, that had lived on Tatooine, because it makes the fact that he couldn't find Luke later make no sense. Not only was he on the same planet, he's with his relatives basically in a house that Anakin has been to before. Like it, I don't know why if he wouldn't have just said. I mean, they were supposed to be hiding Luke and Leia, well, which we'll get to at the end of the next movie, and like they're just like, oh, we'll send him to his uncle. Don't worry about it.
But didn't he not know that she was pregnant? Or did he
I
know?
don't remember honestly, which
I
I,
don't
I
think
guess I guess we can hold off on this till
Yeah, I
till
know.
next week.
We're getting too far ahead. Okay, I'll read about Geonosis.
Okay, go for it.
All right. On Geonosis, Obi-Wan discovers a separatist gathering led by Count Dooku, whom Obi-Wan learns authorized Padme's assassination and is developing a droid army with Trade Federation Viceroy Newt Gunray. I told you that he got off too easy in the first film. I'm just that's my discrepancy with this. But I guess now, this is what he's doing. Okay. Anyway, Obi-Wan transmits his findings to the Jedi Council, and with knowledge of the droid army, Supreme Chancellor Palpatine is voted emergency powers by Jar Jar to send the clone army into battle. Okay, there we go.
Jar Jar's not in this movie very much, but when he is,
He ruins
he's
everything.
giving Senator Palpatine emergency powers. Yeah, yeah. It's I, honestly, this is where the part of the movie where it actually starts to get kind of interesting, and a lot of that I think is Christopher Lee. Christopher Lee, who was like 80 years old. Was it?
Hugh Sarman.
Yes. This same year, which honestly makes me feel worse about like the CGI in this movie is that this came out the same year as The Two Towers, which is
The three.
yeah, that's my favorite of the three. Also, so yeah, Christopher Lee was on a roll. He was in Star Wars and Lord of the Rings, but and he was 80 years old at the time. So
Wow.
yeah, I mean, Christopher Lee. If you're not familiar, I mean, he's been in a million things. Many of them terrible, like old, old horror movies, old monster movies and stuff. When he was also a fan of music, and one of my favorite Christopher Lee facts. He unfortunately passed away a few years ago at I think something like 92. But he formed a metal band. Came out with this album, Charlemagne by the Sword and the Cross, and it's a symphonic metal concept album. Was released in March of 2010. So Christopher Lee made a metal album when he was 87 years old.
Was he a good singer?
I mean, I assume just with with his speaking voice. Yeah, I did not listen to it yet. I very much want to, but that is a life goal if I've ever heard one, to be 87 and make your debut metal album. But he brings so much gravitas to a character named Count Dooku that it's ridiculous.
Wow. Steve said, Angela, maybe they should have a Jar Jar Binks jerk chicken sandwich. Oh my gosh. I mean, so Padme gives him the authority to, be in her place while she's gone. And then he gives emergency powers to Chancellor Palpatine. Good job. But I mean, I will say Jar Jar gets more serious throughout the film, so at least there's that. He's not quite as goofy. They give him a backseat, that's for sure.
Well, and apparently he was supposed to have developed something called Diplo dialect that diplomats speak because they were having trouble understanding him. So many of his lines were supposed to be Ahmed Best speaking normally. And then when he got excited, he would fall back into Jar Jar speak. But
why do you know this?
Star Wars Minute.
Okay.
And apparently they scrapped it at some point. But I think they filmed a lot of it with him speaking, normally, I guess I could say. But yeah, this is such a strange movie from a production standpoint. They added a lot of things that don't seem necessary. They took some interesting things out. Not interesting, but things that would have helped the plot. There was a whole scene where Anakin goes to meet Padme's family and everything like that. And
that was actually
sees her
a good
room.
scene.
And yeah, it wasn't, but it was long. I understand why they cut
was.
it, but there was a lot in it. I mean, yeah, entire sets and everything. Yeah, it was a lot.
Yeah, it was a good scene. I was reading that they did a lot of post production, a lot of CGI, and it was a really quick turnaround. Like they put it together really fast. So, I mean, you can kind of tell that at some parts, but I mean, it's the way they did it. And well, I guess we'll see if we notice a difference in Revenge of the Sith. All right, moving on to the battle, which is probably the best part in the movie.
Yeah, this is on Geonosis. Let me see. I think I accidentally skipped one of my things. Anyway, Anakin and Padme go to Geonosis to rescue Obi-Wan, but are captured. Dooku sentences the trio to death, but they are saved by a battalion of clone troopers led by Yoda, Mace Windu, and other Jedi. Obi-Wan and Anakin intercept Dooku, and the three engage in a lightsaber battle. Dooku injures Obi-Wan and severs Anakin's right arm, but Yoda arrives and defends them. Dooku flees to Coruscant, where he delivers blueprints for a super weapon to his Sith master Darth Sidious, and the Jedi acknowledge the beginning of the Clone Wars, or as the Jedi acknowledge the beginning of the Clone Wars, Anakin secretly marries Padme on Naboo.
Brian did not like the droid factory scene.
Oh my gosh, it's one of the worst scenes in I've ever seen in my life. Not even just in a Star. I
Whoa.
that was, and by the way, that was all added after the fact. That was not in any of the script. They apparently just decided that because Jar Jar wasn't in this as much, and George Lucas apparently very much likes his comic relief characters, which is, I don't know, a strange choice. He basically, if you watch especially these prequels, there is basically one character, at least in the first two, that delivers all of the comedy lines, and nobody else says anything that's even remotely a joke. Where the other movies, that's not the case. Han Solo has, while he is probably the funniest character in the original trilogy, he is not comic relief by any means. But in this one, apparently they decided C-3PO was going to be that, and they needed a pratfall scene. So, and then the whole scene where his head is getting dragged around, and it's just awful, like puns, and I really, really do not like this at all. Most people comment about this is the scene where R2-D2 flies, where we find out he has rockets, which that actually bothers me less than the fact that it's even that the scene is just there. It's another one that's way too long. And there's nothing gained from it. It just ends with them being captured. They could have just walked into the hallway and gotten captured. So,
Yeah, really. I mean, I think that the Geonosians look like the grasshoppers from A Bug's Life, so that's all I could think about the entire time I'm watching it. But you're right, when they're walking down the hallway and the Geonosians are Geonosians? I don't know, are camouflaged. They could have just gotten them. And then that was it. But it's like they need to add time to the movie or something.
And I think that's how it was in the script. They did not need to add time to the movie. This is the longest Star Wars movie, I think.
Yeah.
And I think that's how it was in the script. And then there's a scene, which they did shoot part of at least, of Padme talking to Dooku. And, where they're kind of negotiating for things. And but yeah, it's I don't know. I hate it. I think it's terrible. And until you said that about the Geonosians, I did not notice, and now that's all I can see is the grasshoppers.
I know. They look like Hopper.
And again, and then we cut to the scene right before they go out into the big arena, the gladiatorial Coliseum, that where Padme professes her love for Anakin, which again, it's like, hey, I saw you murder all those bug people. Now I'm really turned on.
I know, like she always looks like a little depressed when she professes her love to him. Like even when they get married, I know that she's like supposed to look super passionate and that's like their thing. But like to me, she always just like she doesn't ever look truly in love with him, and it always kind of bothers me. I don't know. Maybe
I feel like some of that is
like that.
maybe I feel like that's some of Natalie Portman coming through with, do I really have to say this? All right, fine.
Here we go.
Plus,
another scene.
George Lucas, especially in these prequel movies, apparently was notoriously took like 1 or 2 takes at most, and was just like, yeah, did they say the line? Like I just picture him going, like turning to the script supervisor and going, hey, did they say the words? Yeah, they said them, George. Okay, moving on. Like
good enough.
So
yeah.
I it's possible if they had a second or third go at some of these, it would have turned out a little bit better. But again, I think the younger ones had trouble, because they didn't have as much experience. I mean, Hayden Christensen, this is his second movie. It couldn't have been much more than Natalie Portman's like third or fourth, which is I think why actors like Christopher Lee and Ewan McGregor stand out so much, because they know how to deliver crappy lines when they're given to them.
I mean, at that point, Anakin or Hayden Christensen's more believable in those romance scenes, in my opinion, because Natalie's just like, all right.
In that one, he definitely is, because he seems real confused as to what's going on, like, which is how we're all feeling. Yeah.
Love me?
And I mean, even her line, "I've been dying a little each day since you came back into my life." He looks very confused, and I was looking the same way, because I'm like, wait, does she hate him? What is going on here? Like, that is not how. I mean, I mean, I love my wife very much. I don't think I've ever told her that I die a little each day when she's in my life. I feel like she would take that poorly.
I mean, it's just very weird lines. And then they go from there to the Intergalactic Coliseum of
Yeah,
sorts.
yeah.
Um, and then Brian writes, Padme can pick a lock. Royalty sure is different in Naboo. Which, okay, this always kind of bothered me because they let her keep her utility belt, which is
Yes.
kind of like an unfair advantage. I mean,
Yeah.
I know the Jedis kind of get like their mind tricks and stuff. Like they can calm like the animals and stuff and do their like little jumpity jumps. But still, like she gets a utility belt. You think they would have kind of taken away all that stuff beforehand.
Yeah, and I mean, she just pulls out like I guess a lockpick. You don't really see what it is, and I, are there locks in the Star Wars? I mean, this is like the first time I've seen a lock in Star Wars. I feel like all the other doors just have like panels, and or that R2 goes in and does his little thing too.
Well,
So
maybe
like,
Geonosis isn't that far along.
well, maybe, but I mean, did she know like when she packed her, or is that just always she's got like the batarang and on one side and the lockpick on the other side, and like
I
I don't
don't
know.
know.
It's a very
Like they,
like I understand like if she got I have no problem with her getting out of it, and even the fighting and shooting and stuff I can kind of understand. Like I feel like she always has her security people around her. I feel like basic hand to hand combat and stuff is not out of the realm of possibility for her. But for
right.
some reason the lockpick I was just like what what is
It'd make
this?
a little more sense if it was a hairpin that she
Yeah.
took like out of her
If
hair.
you saw all of a sudden her hair was down and then she's like then at least
Right.
you know where she had it. Yeah.
I don't know. I guess we could discuss
But
this all day, but it
but
doesn't
other
make
than that, like the rest of this whole scene is one of the better scene. I mean, this is basically what when the prequels were announced, like this is kind of what we all hoped it would be. It's just a bunch of Jedi doing awesome Jedi stuff.
Oh, it was really cool, especially when the arena just like lit up with lightsabers
Oh
of different
yes,
colors.
yeah.
Oh, it was so cool. I like got goosebumps.
I love on
It's
the
very neat.
DVD insert. There's this very cool picture of Yoda with, and in the back are just kind of shadows of Jedi with their lightsabers lit up behind them. That I think is
Hmm.
a very very neat picture. That is then ruined on the other side by these two, but and then like the inside they have the what kind of an odd pairing because it's Dooku and then all the stormtroopers, except the stormtroopers are quote unquote good guys in this. So
Yeah.
that was kind of a giveaway to the future for it. And yes, even this one, I still have the old school DVD box. I don't get to Blu-ray till the later movies. So,
Um,
um,
Steve said it's just a bobby pin. So okay,
but
then
I
that
don't.
makes
But did we?
sense. Oh,
I don't think we saw her taking it out of her hair though.
she pulls it out of her belt. So either she
Yeah.
had like a backup in case her hair got messed up. Yeah, I mean that must have been the case. I don't know. It just really now it's bothering me, which is like we're probably gonna lose people watching because we're obsessing over this. But like anyway, I guess that doesn't
Yeah.
bother me as much as her jumping from the high tower
Oh yes.
onto Anakin's creature and
Yes.
doesn't even say an ow
Well,
because
my comment on this is they're like, can she still have kids after that? Because she lands like split legged. It's like a 15-foot jump onto this like creature.
kind
I'm like,
yeah,
that can't do
that's
great things to the baby maker.
I mean, I question her high pain tolerance every time because I'm just like, ow, like that would hurt for anyone. But I mean, what Brian said, the Jedi mowing through everything is exactly what we have been waiting
Yeah,
for
yeah.
since the prequels were announced.
Here's all a lot of the Jedi, but like, yeah, I mean that it is. It's something that as a Star Wars nerd already when these movies were announced, I remember talking about that with my friends. Like, oh my gosh, this is when the Jedi's were everywhere. Like, the first Star Wars starts with finding out that Darth Vader wiped out the Jedi's. So this is obviously before that, and we're thinking, oh, this is great, but part of the problem is that there just aren't enough like mass Jedi fight scenes. This is about, I think, the only one. Again, I might be proven wrong next week, but this is
We'll
very
let you know.
this is very hard not remembering Sith very well because the other movies I all remember very well. Either I've seen a million times or I've seen recently, but they also the Jedi's are so calm and centered all the time that it makes for really lame acting in all of the talking scenes. So it wasn't as cool as I'd hoped. But this scene it was, and I I'm a little annoyed when I watch it now that most of what they do seems to just be deflecting laser blast from the droids. There isn't a lot of them just like spinning and cutting through everything. There's some of that, of
Mhm.
course, but I really wanted to see them just house everybody, um, and they didn't. And I have to point out my personal favorite random Jedi is this guy Kit Fisto, who is the guy with the kind of like octopus hair. But I love the picture I just put up of him where he just looks so happy to be out in the field like doing something. Um, and some of the Jedi have great names. Kit Fisto is one of the better ones, but um,
Yoda's fight is amazing, and it's something I think that all Star Wars fans have been waiting for since the 70s. Well, no, do we meet when do we meet Yoda?
1982 it was when
1982?
Empire, yeah. So
Yeah. So we've been waiting for Yoda to fight since that long. So that was amazing. But watching this movie now, I was really disappointed by Anakin and Dooku's fight. And I
yeah,
understand that, like, Dooku's like 80 years old in real life at that point. So there's just like a lot of, like what, blue and red,
yeah.
and a lot of just like simulation of a lightsaber
The
fight.
close-ups of Christopher Lee when he's just going like this with the sword like over and over again
Yeah.
are very funny. And obviously all the wide shots are a stunt man. He's not going to jump around like that. So
I mean, I guess I was expecting so much more, so I was a little disappointed. But then, of course, the Yoda fight was amazing, and
well, and
that was
that's I guess that's the downside of casting an elderly man rather than Ray Park who played Darth Maul. It's you're not going to get the fight scene as much.
right.
The Yoda one I'm always torn on because I do think it's very cool to see that Yoda, see some of Yoda's skills that you have heard about the whole time.
Hmm.
The flipping and jumping stuff always seems a little too far for me. But I agree. For the most part, it's great. And actually, towards the end, we're going to watch a commercial from the DVD release of Attack of the Clones, where they break out possibly the worst campaigns or worst ad slogan I've ever heard. But I won't ruin that yet. One thing I do find funny because when we do meet Yoda in Empire, he's 900 years old and seems like a kind of crazy old frog man or whatever. The craziness I understand completely. He's been on the swamp for apparently 20 some years, but but he really lost a lot of mobility in between like 870 and 900 years old. Because boy, he could move when he wanted to at
I
870, and then
know.
at 900, he's just like climbing up on
He's
rocks
just
like a
like
child.
he's
Like,
let himself go. He's like,
yeah,
I'm in retirement now. But
it's like me from between like 35 and 40, where I'm like, oh, why do I feel so much older now? I guess that's when you're 900. I guess it's the last 30 years that do that to you.
well, you wonder if, like, losing all those Jedi and not being surrounded by the Force kind of does something to you.
I'm sure. Yeah.
I mean, just kind of being so isolated and by yourself. I don't know.
Um,
Makes you wonder.
so now I guess we'll jump to the very end. The movie basically ends with two scenes. One in the Jedi Council room, where where Yoda says, "Begun the Clone War has," which is very weird that they named it already. And I half expected him to just look straight down the barrel of the camera and go, "That
Yeah.
sure was an attack of the clones,"
Just
like
like break the wall.
yeah, because it was such a weird line. Like, I mean, I like Star Wars fans had known of the Clone Wars, but like, do you name wars immediately? I mean, I guess like Desert Storm was kind of like that, but I feel like there weren't people going, "Oh, this First World War is really," like it's. It was the Great War, I believe. Although I guess I shouldn't say stuff like that because I don't know history. I know Star Wars history better than
You
real
know Star
history.
Wars.
It's terrible. Um,
The one thing I had a question about, and I think I know the answer, but I'm just throwing it out there. Um, Dooku knows that Anakin's going to bring balance to the Force, and then he cuts off his arm. And I'm wondering, does he do that because, he is trying to play the part, or is he doing it because, making him part machine makes him a little less human? Does it just work out
I,
that way? Like, you think you'd want to preserve him a little bit?
my theory is that he was just trying to act the part. Um, I don't know, although I don't, as far as the prophecy goes, because all the Jedi think that prophecy means that he will eradicate the Sith. And actually, a lot of Star Wars fans also think that that's what it means. I don't agree. I think it meant actual balance, like,
Hmm.
similar number of Sith and Jedi. But
Right.
but again, I don't know that even if Dooku knew the prophecy, I'm not sure what he would have thought that meant. At this point, though, and another thing that isn't really explored in this movie, it's kind of mentioned offhandedly, but is that Palpatine has already been meeting with Anakin and working with him
Kind of
about
grooming him.
about something, and I don't know if they actually say, but presumably he is already trying to turn him. So I assume that Dooku knows that, at least that Darth Sidious has told him, like, oh, make sure you don't kill young Skywalker. I think we might be able to turn him. Although, if since there are only two Sith, a master and an apprentice, maybe Dooku also knows that if Anakin becomes the apprentice, that he's got to be out. So,
Hmm.
maybe he just was not interested in keeping him alive. But my guess is that he did that to kind of play the part. Although I'm not sure what he did to Obi-Wan. Obi-Wan just kind of laid there for a while, not
He
really
was like,
doing anything.
well, yeah, because Anakin was electrocuted. And then what happened to Obi-Wan?
I'm
What
not
was that?
sure exactly. He
And I
got
forgot.
injured, but I didn't go back to really watch it. Brian in the chat here uh, has a good point that Anakin was actually starting to win, so Dooku kind of had to cut off his arm, and Christopher Lee clearly seemed relieved afterwards. So, that could be it too. That maybe he was just gonna try to, like, kind of hold him off or do something minor, and then Anakin actually started to get the better of him. So he's like, "All right, I gotta
Mhm.
end this now,"
Yeah.
and was just like, "Haha." But
Did you see what Jesus wrote? Did you know Stan Lee played Yoda in the movie?
I did not know that.
I
But
did not notice that
I mean,
either.
Frank Oz did the voices for, I believe, all of
Hmm.
them. I think even the CGI Yoda, but I don't know. So I don't know, but that is certainly possible. I did not know that.
Oh, he
Um,
was hit with a rock, Noel said.
okay.
Okay, I missed that. Thank you for pointing that
But it
out.
is weird. Like, he just, I mean, presumably his force powers would still work. Yet he's not, like, trying to throw stuff at Dooku or anything. He's just going,
Right.
like,
I
I don't know.
know.
It makes Obi-Wan not look great, honestly.
I
But
mean, the good thing about the lightsabers, it's like immediately like cauterizes. So it's
yeah,
like you're not
it
being
can't be
cut.
it can't be a terrible wound to get as wounds go, I suppose.
I
Um,
know.
all right, a couple last things. We've been going an hour already, so um, I'm gonna skip some of my things. One general problem that with the prequels, and I know somebody mentioned before, where we're already seeing Anakin as Darth Vader. Um, Prequels are tough because if you don't have characters that are new, you you disable basically all of the tension. I mean, we already know what's going to happen to Obi-Wan. We know what's going to happen to Palpatine. We know what's going to happen to Anakin and Yoda. Um, you know, Padme, we kind of know, even if we don't know specifically. We know she's not around later. And it makes these kinds of movies very tricky, and I think we'll talk a lot more about it when we get later. I think Rogue One did a really good job of this,
Hmm.
where they created a whole bunch of characters that we really didn't know the outcome of.
Yep.
Solo, I think, does this very, very poorly. So, and I think these prequels do too. Like, they don't really introduce a character whose outcome is unknown. I mean, there's some
Yep.
side characters, obviously, like Count Dooku. We aren't sure, but the ones that really matter, um, seem to be ones that were like, okay, well, he becomes Darth Vader. We know Obi-Wan goes to live on
Hmm.
Tatooine. We even know what happens to C-3PO and R2-D2. So,
Yeah.
it's a lot of it's tough to not color a lot of this.
Right.
Um, so, all right, before we say our goodbyes, let's watch this. Let's watch this ad. This is again from the DVD release of Attack of the Clones, entitled Yoda Man.
On November 12th, who the man? Yoda Man. When you take home Star Wars Episode 2 on DVD. Digitally filmed, digitally mastered. A perfect clone. Own the first major live-action film on DVD captured directly from its digital source. This 2-disc set is packed with over 6 hours of bonus features you'll actually want to watch. Star Wars Episode 2, Yoda the Man. On DVD November 12th.
All right, and that was an ad that they ran that started with Huda Man, Yoda Man, and then showed him fighting Count Dooku. And honestly, I think what annoys me more than how terrible that is at the end, they then say Yoda the Man, which completely breaks their whole scheme. And I remember these ads, there was like print ads for this that said Yoda Man, and it was some marketing exec just gone wild, and it makes me both laugh and cringe over it. But I had to show that. It's amazingly ridiculous.
I just saw it now because I'm on a delay. I'm seeing this when you guys are. Oh my gosh, that was an interesting marketing tactic, but I mean, it's catchy. I can just see so many little kids for like weeks repeating that around school and to their parents.
And it's funny, things like that and the prequels in general, I have a lot less anger for now that there are continual Star Wars films that are, some I like very much. I spent many years thinking the prequels were going to be the last Star Wars movies possibly ever, which made me very, very mad, especially, as a 20-something guy who had more anger than I needed to. And now that, since The Force Awakens and Last Jedi came out, I'm like, oh, look, we're more Star Wars movies. And like, it doesn't matter if these are bad. They weren't the last ones. So great.
Yeah, no kidding.
And that's kind of how I feel about that commercial, where I think that probably really annoyed me when I saw it before.
Well, and that was early 2000s, so
it would have been like end of 2002 probably.
Yeah, so they're crazier commercials then. Is there anything else you want to talk about before we go?
No, we'll be back next week with Revenge of the Sith.
Well, if you like this chat, please give it a thumbs up, and we will see you next Friday, probably at this exact time. So that's 11 a.m. Eastern times.
Yep, Eastern U.S. time. Yep.
All right. See you next week.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.